Here we go. Now I've got half an hour. I don't know whether I start from 9:27 or not. That was when I started. I'm fearful of Kirsten. She ain't gentle, despite what she said. When I became chair of the AEF, and usually it's the wife that's the piece of furniture, but in this case her husband is, I called for a new approach to environmental issues. I explained that the established environment groups are too preoccupied with headlines and publicity stunts and I suppose mostly emotional issues, which I think is really dangerous, rather than the hard work of finding enduring solutions. And that is a serious problem with our environmental groups. I think they did a great job making the world aware of the problems. I think they're failing spectacularly in guiding the world as to how it might deal with the problems. They're poor at following through. They often seem unreasonably prejudiced against people and industry. The AEF, Australian Environment Foundation, wants to promote honest debate and discussion and a more evidence-based approach. In my first interview I explained it's not good to just keep declaring a new national park and then, as the old conservation movements often do, decamp, rack off, without ever asking whether there's resources there, and if there are resources, how do you properly maintain and manage these parks? This is a massive problem. As a result, national parks are full of feral weeds and prone to destructive wildfires, and by golly, I could take you to some national parks that are a terrible disgrace. That's not an attack on the national parks people themselves. I'm just saying that system itself is not working, because I know lots of national parks people that are some of the finest people I've ever met. The AEF is potentially the beginning of a whole new environmental movement. On behalf of the organisation and the growing list of members, I would like to welcome you here today. Bring your minds that are open. My theory, I suppose, and the broad idea of my talk is riding change. The greatest threat to us is me, myself, and all of you here today and everybody else. We're all aware that animal and plant species are becoming extinct at a cataclysmically rapid rate. We're aware that vast areas of our planet are being damaged. We know that we're not managing our planet well at all. Some say there's a real possibility that severe climate change could happen very soon. They say that the world's ability to buffer climatic change, to minimise rapid temperature fluctuations, could collapse, and it could lead to horrific consequences. We need to think about these things. Is that true? Is that just stampeding the horses? What is it? At this stage, the AEF has not developed a policy on this, but I believe that we simply cannot afford to ignore issues like that. These are issues that are being put to the public and they need to be dealt with. We remain as the greatest threat because we, the citizens of planet Earth, are not acting together to sort things out. These must not be allowed to be political issues. These can't be issues of conservationists versus farmers or of any other group fighting with others. We must act cooperatively as a united group. In other words, these wars you're always seeing of, protests and all the rest of it, they were great for a period of letting the world know there was an issue and a problem and so on in various areas. They are no longer acceptable practices. The conservation movement has done a great job alerting the world to all the problems. Time to move on. It's now time for everyone to come together, get the job of saving the planet done. I suppose a bit like land care, except that they dealt with smaller issues, that is the catchment management issues and so on. We need to adopt radically different thinking to cope with the second phase of saving the world. I have been a part of a number of environmental groups. I was obviously a national director of land care for a while, and it has achieved a lot. I suppose the thing that I would like to see, in a way, is that we need a bigger group like the AEF that deals with the global issues and recognises that change is the only constant, and that group needs to be prepared to ride change. My view, I suppose, and some would say unkindly, and I'm still a member of the Australian Conservation Foundation and many other green groups, have been for a long time and have been involved in their running in years gone by and so on, when I represented various groups, and you go along to all these meetings and so on. It seems to me there's almost a belief that if you squeeze your arms really tight, you hold your breath and close your eyes, maybe the world will stay the same. Or maybe you can somehow wave a wand and turn it back to what it was when Jimmy Cook arrived. Well, you can't. It is changing very rapidly now. It always was changing, but man's interference is clearly changing it quite rapidly indeed. There's a need to put a saddle on change, not try and hold back the oceans like King Canute. Put a saddle on change, woohoo! Ride it, and ride it hard for the best outcomes that you can get. Since I became chair of the Australian Environment Foundation, we've made public comment on two issues. Need to start recycling water, and you will hear more of that from somebody that is one of my great heroes, the Mayor of Toowoomba, in a little while. The need to start Di. Di, you here? I haven't even looked around to see if she is yet. Maybe she hasn't arrived yet. I love her. She's just the quintessential Australian woman. I can say it before she gets here. We need to start recycling water. We also need to think about global warming and our energy future and so on. On behalf of the AEF, I recently called for a significant expansion of the federal government's inquiry into nuclear energy, as the current review will not produce a sufficiently accurate or useful comparison between the various energy generating options. We need to know what is the start to finish likely cost of all current forms of electricity generation. And that's a complex thing to do, but it has to be done. And you can't compare them until you have done that with all of the forms of energy. I take it you know what I mean, start to finish. In other words, you know, what are the waste problems and 1,000 other issues of producing that form of energy. No faking in it. Anything that's a cost needs to be factored in. What is the start to finish likely cost of emerging electricity generation technologies, including alternative forms, nuclear power generation, as well as coal, gas, hydro, solar, tidal wind and biomass, whatever it is, we should be looking at it. What is the start to finish likely carbon balance from each of the current and emerging viable electricity generation technologies? We are an environmental group not frightened of nuclear energy. I'm not. And there's certainly plenty of people that are starting to say nuclear doesn't represent as big a threat to the planet perhaps as coal does. But we want to consider these things objectively relevant to other options.